room, I'm going to be taking a look at some good and bad Formula 1 games across a variety of different platforms. We're going to start off with a game by Accolade called Grand Prix Circuit, which was released on the PC for the MS-DOS platform in 1988. I believe it was also released on the Amstrad CPC and possibly a couple of the other home computer systems back in those days. So as you'll see here, any of you guys that are fans of Formula 1, this game actually has real cars with real engines and, well, yeah, what looks like real specifications of the cars. And yes, of course, the colour palette does look a little bit primitive. There does seem to be a limited range of colours. The frame rate as you get going is a bit choppy, but I did class this as a good Formula 1 game back in the day. I thought it was good, it was enjoyable for its time, and I still stand by that now. It is a good Formula 1 game, definitely. And of course, with every good Formula 1 game, there has to be a bad one. And the next one, in my opinion, is bad. I really do not like it. And that is a game called Fastest 1 on the Sega Mega Drive, the Japanese Sega Mega Drive, made by Human. Didn't they make that Super Soccer that me and Mike did on the Super Soccer review, or the Awful Football Games review recently? I think they probably did. So, maybe that gives you an idea as to what this game's going to be like. And, oh my god. The screen that you basically get to play in is like a very small letterbox. You've got this pointless free practice, number of laps, fastest laps, the fake Longines Olivetti as well, taking up a big chunk of the screen, and a map of the track. And, oh my god, the gameplay is terrible. I'm not going to talk too much about the graphics because it's a 16-bit racing game on the Mega Drive, so what do we really expect? But the gameplay is abysmal. It really is bad. Somebody... and they obviously like that crashing sound effect when you hit those boards as well. Somebody obviously thought back in the day that this was good and that this was a decent racing game. It's not. It's terrible. It's a really bad example of a Formula 1 game. It's one I really don't like. Thankfully, the next one is going to be a good one. Sticking with the Sega Mega Drive, Super Monaco Grand Prix. This was originally released in the arcades and got ported across to the Mega Drive, the Sega Master System. It was on the Game Gear, and also it had some home console releases. I seem to remember playing this on the Amiga, on the A1200. It was released for basically the A500, I think, and you could play it on the 1200. This game, again, a bit primitive. Colour palette is definitely wider than what we saw in Grand Prix Circuit. The frame rate is smoother, and I just think it plays really nicely. It's still a game that's quite enjoyable today, even with the primitive nature of it, the limited nature of the gameplay. As you can see, I'm first in this race, and there's a position limit. If I fall behind that position limit, basically it's game over for me. So into the tunnel, it's sort of loosely based on Monaco. And as you can see, I'm leading, we've jumped to the last lap. This corner's really tricky that I've had to slow right down for. Through the final couple of corners, onto the main straight in a second. And I'm going to try and run the flagman over. Something I always used to do as a youngster playing this game. And of course there was Ayrton Senna's Super Monaco GP2 as a sequel to this. Moving on, another bad Formula 1 game. This intrigued me because of course it's got an official picture from the 1993 Formula 1 season. It's Human Grand Prix 2 on the Super Famicom. But oh my god, it's made by Human, so it's going to be another bad game. What is it with Human and bad games? It's a bit like LJN with bad NES games, isn't it? So, is this going to be any good? Well, I've already probably said it's not going to be very good, is it? Real teams, real drivers from the 1993 Formula 1 season, which is really cool. Also, the graphics of the game I think are pretty cool for a 16-bit Super Nintendo or Super Famicom game. And we're going to jump straight into the race. This is the setting screen. Not really too interested in the settings. I'm just going to go straight to the race. After a bit of time, And there's the Mode 7 effect, which I thought was really cool on the Super Nintendo. It gave you that depth of, 3D if you like. And you see that triangle underneath the back of the car there? That shows you which direction the steering's pointing in. This game's steering is absolutely horrendous. As you can see me crashing. The reason is because the steering doesn't reset back to the centre when you let go of the controls. It stays where it was when you press the D-pad. So it stays exactly where you left it. And as a result of that, and because I'm not used to playing racing games that are like that, the car is just going all over the place. And that's what makes this game really bad. It's a shame, because if that steering wasn't like that and the handling of the cars were a bit better, I actually think I really would have enjoyed this game and it would have been really cool. But as ever, it's made by human, they've done a bad job, they're a disgrace to humans. And there's me hitting a Sauber and spinning out in my Williams Renault. Back to a good game again next. Here we go. It's F1 that was released on the Mega Drive. It was also released on the Super Nintendo, and I believe it was released on the Amiga as well. It was actually on the 500, I think, and the 1200. This game, besides being a bit frenetic, besides having quite a steep learning curve and being quite tricky to get used to, especially when you've selected manual gears like I have, so you have to think about your gear changes, this game's actually quite good. I think if I spent more time with this, I'd probably get pretty good at it, and I'd probably appreciate this game and enjoy it a bit more. As you can see, I'm all over the place at the moment and just crashing into all the trackside objects. Doesn't look too bad. Again, the tracks are kind of loosely based on their real-life counterparts. This is an official Formula 1 game, so you've got real teams, real tracks, real drivers, all that kind of good stuff. And yeah, this is pretty cool. It's pretty fast. Like it. Look how I hit a car and I jump up in the air. Could try and overtake these two by jumping over them, apparently. Bashing into him, and then I overtake him eventually. But yeah, this game is pretty cool. I recommend it if you like Super Monaco GP, that's your kind of thing. I also recommend Nigel Mansell's World Championship on the Super Nintendo, because that version for me is the best version, and it plays sort of similarly to this, but without the dodgy jumping up and down when you hit things. So again, every good Formula 1 game, unfortunately, there's a bad Formula 1 game to go with it. And the next one is a really, really bad Formula 1 game. In fact, I'd go as far as saying it's probably one of the worst I have ever played. And that is F1 Pole Position on the Nintendo 64, based around the 1996 Formula 1 season. This game is a full-on arcade Formula 1 racing game. So you can see I'm choosing Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. All looks pretty good. In Melbourne, which is one of my favourite Formula 1 tracks. I've always liked Melbourne ever since they included it. And there, showing you the starting grid, not too worried about that. And into the game. I'm not going to complain about the graphics, because we all know by now the sort of trickery that Nintendo did with the N64 and the weird effect it had on the graphics. And as you can see me wheel spinning off the line. The steering is just, oh my god, it's abysmal. It really is abysmal. You try and steer the car, it just sort of snaps around, it's too sensitive. The handling, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the car is really connected to a track. It almost feels a bit like F-Zero, but F-Zero is actually a good game because it's not based on Formula 1. Yeah, you can see the physics when you hit other cars is pretty rubbish as well. It's just, yeah, it's just really bad. I really struggled to play this when I switched this on to record it for this video. It's just really, really bad, guys. Not one I'd recommend. A big disappointment for me on the N64. But we're going to be back to the good Formula 1 games next, so don't worry. Because here we have F1 World Grand Prix 2 on the Nintendo 64. This game again does have a bit of a steep learning curve with the handling. I recommend holding the N64 joystick, the one in the centre of the controller, up, and then sort of swinging from left to right with the stick as if you were controlling a steering wheel, and you'll see that actually it does make the game handle much better and is a bit more logical. If you just try and press directly left or right using the analog stick on the 64, the car's just going to be swinging around and spinning around all over the place, and you're going to really dislike it. So putting the strange N64 graphical weirdness that goes on from Nintendo's anti-aliasing, I think it was, that they included, This game actually does look really, really good. And I remember playing the first one around my good old mate Richard Judge's house and being quite jealous of the fact that they had a really awesome Formula 1 game on the N64. It was really, really good. Quite enjoy this. It's one that I still fire up from time to time and play today. It's quite enjoyable. Oh, and as you can see, I'm getting it all wrong and spinning out. Now, some of you guys that know about Formula 1 games will know that Jacques Villeneuve actually didn't want his name and his image appearing in the Formula 1 games at this time. So you might be wondering, oh, he's got J Villeneuve and number 1 in the Williams Mechachrome. That's because this game, a bit like Formula 1 97 on the PlayStation, allows you to edit the driver names. So I was able to put J Villeneuve in, which is pretty cool. So yeah, quite like this game. I recommend it, I really do. If you've got an N64 and you're looking for a Formula 1 racing game, whatever you do, steer clear of F1 pole position because it's absolutely awful. Pick this one up, or the first one, because they're pretty similar, to be honest. I think the first one is based on the 1997 season, and this one, judging from the livery of Villeneuve's Williams, is based on the 1998 season. But yeah, this one's pretty cool, guys. Check this one out.
Only 3 laps to go.
You can tell how much I'm enjoying this particular game because of the length of the video footage I'm showing here. Oh, and that car, that was strange. Did you see how that car just spun off at random with me basically being nowhere near it? That's quite an interesting thing. I've not seen that before on this game, but that's pretty cool. If the AI drivers make some mistakes like that, I'm all up for those. That's awesome. But again, with every good Formula 1 game, I have to show and talk about a bad one. So, next up, as I'm spinning off, Formula 1 98. Now this one was a big disappointment. Formula 1 97, which came before this, was probably one of the very best Formula 1 games I've ever played, alongside the likes of Grand Prix and Grand Prix 3 on the PC. This one was fantastic. F1 97 was fantastic. So I thought surely 98 is going to be good, just with the 98 season, the 98 tracks, drivers, etc. Surely it's going to be good. As you're going to see, and as I'm going to try and describe as we get into this game, it's not particularly good at all. In fact, it's pretty awful. So cool little loading screen there, and it shows you a spinning track, and then you're into the race itself. Now, straight off the bat, okay, I said I wouldn't complain about graphics in games, but compared to Formula 1 97, this looks horrendous. Look at the cars in the foreground there, up ahead. They all look like plain solid colours. And look, those 2 cars there, I think that's an Arrows and a Stewart Ford that are changing colours. Yes, guys, I've lost my front wing, which will affect my handling. But even with my front wing, the cars on this game handle like absolute garbage. They're awful. Try and take a corner at high speed and see how you get on. It's ridiculous. You have to slow down way too much. And okay, I commend them for making it so that if you just hammer the brakes hard, the car will spin off the track. You're likely to lose control. That I understand and that I accept, but the handling in this game is just intolerably bad. I remember me and a friend back at school having a bit of a debate about this game, about why it was so bad, because one of my friends quite liked it and sort of got to grips with it. I just kept playing it and kept getting frustrated and didn't like it at all. Crashing into a Sauber. I think we've almost had quite enough of that game. And strangely, you get this weird flickering with the graphics. It's not my PlayStation, because I can play other games and it's not a problem. For some reason, this game has this weird flickering that goes on in the middle of the picture at times. The graphics on this game, as I said, they're botched, they're horrible, they're rubbish. So, to the final game in this video, Formula 1 on the Sony PlayStation. This is the first one that was released on the PlayStation. This game truly blew me away back in the mid-90s when I saw this on a friend's PlayStation. I couldn't believe how fantastic this game was, how good it looked, how awesome it sounded. To have commentary from the great Murray Walker, I mean, it just blew me away. It really did. So, officially based on the 1995 Formula 1 season. You're going through here the track listing, or I'm going through the track listing, I should say. Going to just do a race with Damon Hill at the famous Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Belgium. So I've basically edited these loading screens out, and I am actually going to stop talking, and I'm going to let the legend that is Mr. Murray Walker speak.
That's moved him up a place. He's hard on the accelerator. And the gap is closing. There was definitely contact between the two cars. Superlative. Spectacular overtaking there. He was lucky to get away with that. He's been overtaken. 15. Rubens Barrichello. 16, Damon Hill. 17, Luca Badoa. He's into the barriers. Race order. In first place, Gerhard Berger. In second position, Jean Alesi. Third, Mika Häkkinen. That's taken him up a position. It's the final lap.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. Coming next on Dave's Game Room will be Dave and Mike Reviews GT64 from the Nintendo 64. Thanks for watching.